Hello and welcome back to Karisu. Today we'll be discussing 5 medical illnesses that you probably never heard of before. There are so many diseases out there and a vast majority of them are rather uncomfortable. But then among all of them, there are some diseases which are just so unique, so rare that it sounds almost like it came out of a fantasy book. Today we're going to be talking about 5 of those diseases. Without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it. The first unique medical condition we're going to discuss is called the Lima syndrome. Most of us have heard of the Stockholm syndrome. It means a condition when, let's say, I'm taken hostage by some terrorists. I start to develop emotional connection with the terrorists. I start to sympathize with them, and I would actually genuinely feel that they are the good person in that particular scenario. So in Lima syndrome, the exact opposite happens. It's when hostage takers become sympathetic towards the needs and the wishes of the hostages. The name for this particular illness, the Lima syndrome, comes from an incident which happened in 1996 in Peru. There was a party being held in the Japanese embassy, and all of a sudden this bunch of terrorists, radical activists, came and took over the whole building. They are called the Tupac Amaru Revolutionary Army, and when they took control of the building, they managed to take few hundred diplomats, government officials, military officials, and business executives from many countries as hostages. The weirdest thing is, after a few days, they started releasing all these hostages by themselves. They didn't care who they released or how important the person they released was also. For example, they actually released the future president of Peru and the mother of the current president of Peru. We don't know if this condition, this Lima syndrome, is because of guilt, indecisiveness, second guessing their decision, or just pure obliviousness. The second unique medical condition we're going to be discussing is called Stendhal syndrome, and this is a very interesting medical condition. It's characterized by physical and emotional anxiety to the point where it almost looks like they're having a panic attack. Together with this, they can even have delusions, hallucinations, confusions. All this when they're exposed to art. Like any drawing which is perceived as being very beautiful, or if there are a lot of art collections in one particular place. In severe conditions, if let's say you have a friend with Stendhal syndrome and you bring them out for a walk and they suddenly come upon this beautiful place in nature, even that beautiful scenery can trigger the anxiety. This particular illness is named after a French author. His name was actually Stendhal, and he explained his own personal experience when he visited Florence in 1817. The third unique medical condition is called Diogenes syndrome. After listening to this particular syndrome, you probably are reminded of some of your friends who have the same characteristics. Diogenes syndrome is characterized by extreme self-neglect. That means they don't really care about themselves. Social withdrawalness. That means they don't like to mix with other people. Lack of shame and apathy. That means they can do whatever they want in front of you. Like they don't have any shame at all. And even if you are hurt, they won't really feel anything towards you. And compulsive hoarding of rubbish. If you enter the home of someone who has Diogenes syndrome, it's probably filled with rubbish. They don't like to throw things away. This particular syndrome is seen mainly in elderly people and mostly is associated with dementia. And this particular syndrome was named after a Greek philosopher named Diogenes of Sinope. He was a cynic and also a minimalist. So the basic philosophy of cynicism is that life should be lived virtuously in agreement with nature by rejecting all conventional desire for wealth, power and fame, to live simply free of all possessions. And Diogenes was said to have brought this ideology to its extreme. It is actually recorded that he lived in a wine barrel in the streets of Athens, like he didn't own anything at all. And the most famous story about him was when Alexander the Great, the most powerful man at that time, after hearing about Diogenes, went towards him and asked him, what is the one thing you want in the world the most? Like, what do you really want? I can give you anything I want. For that, he looked Alexander the Great straight in the eye and said, for you to get out of my sunlight. The fourth unique medical illness we're going to be discussing is called Munchausen syndrome. If you're a fan of Eminem, you have probably heard of this word, this particular disease in one of his songs. But this disease is actually, the name for the disease is actually derived from a German officer, Munchausen von Baron. He was very famous for fabricating his adventures, like over-exaggerating whatever he went through. For example, he'll say a story like he was in the middle of the war field and 300 soldiers came towards him and with one rifle he managed to kill all of them or something weird like that. And that's what Munchausen syndrome is. It's a condition when people fake symptoms or create new symptoms for themselves just so they can visit a hospital or they can get treatment from a hospital without any obvious external reward. There are two versions of Munchausen syndrome. One is just Munchausen syndrome, another is Munchausen syndrome by proxy. The first one means if let's say I have Munchausen syndrome, I frequently fake symptoms about myself. For example, one day I'll say my leg is swollen, tomorrow I'll say my head is aching and stuff like that. The next, the Munchausen by proxy, is done to another person. For example, usually a parent to a child or a child to an elderly parent. So they'll say that person has this symptom, that person sleepwalks at night, that person keeps falling down or something weird that even the patient himself wouldn't have realized. Some of the characteristics of people with Munchausen syndrome is they often fake symptoms or create new symptoms, usually have a very dramatic story behind what happened, but then the story is usually inconsistent. They have records in many hospitals, like they just keep jumping hospitals one after another, and when you speak to them, the amount of medical terminologies they know can sometimes even overtake what a doctor knows. Like they really know in and out of the hospital, of the medication, of what procedure, what drugs people use. They're like very well versed in it. They're often very excited when the doctor says, okay, we have to do a surgery or we have to conduct this particular procedure. They're very excited and eager for that procedure or surgery. Every time you give them a negative result, like let's say they come and say they are pregnant and you check they are not pregnant, tomorrow they'll come in with a different symptom. After every negative is a new symptom, and these symptoms only happen when they are alone, so other people don't actually see what's going on. Those who have Munchausen syndrome often have a childhood history of trauma and neglect. Before we move on to the fifth unique illness, if you found this video to be valuable, if you learned anything at all from this video, the only thing I ask is for you to share this video with your friends and family members. Spread the knowledge. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, go ahead and smash that subscribe button right there, and please do click the bell icon because YouTube's algorithm is changing all the time and we want to make sure our videos come and reach you. And until the next informative video, in anything you do, do your best and be the best version of yourself. And now for the fifth most unique medical illness, and this even freaked me out. It's called apotemnophilia. Other name for it, or other more understandable terms for this, is body integrity identity disorder or amputee identity disorder. It's basically a neurological disorder. People with this particular condition have a very strong desire, strong urge to actually amputate part of their body. They just don't feel like that part of their body is part of them. They feel like it's alien, it's uncomfortable, it's not supposed to be there, it's not natural. So most of them are very obsessed with chopping off that particular part of their body. And in severe cases, they'll actually do it themselves, or they'll ask a friend or family member or some random stranger to do it for them. Because most surgeons, the good ones anyways, won't simply chop off someone's healthy limb. For example, an arm, they won't simply cut it off because it's functioning, it's well, there's nothing wrong with it. When situations like this arises, these patients will go and damage their hand beyond repair, to the point where even the surgeon will have to say like, okay, I'll cut it off, like there's no use for the hand anymore already. And the most puzzling part is, few months after this surgery, when you go look for them again and you ask them how they feel, almost all of them are very happy with their decisions. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. Join us again on Monday for part 2 of this video. Bye bye.